Thank you for listening to the Witness History podcast from the BBC World Service with me, Alex Collins. This is the story of when the world's most famous woman, Princess Diana, was supposedly smuggled into a gay nightclub in London by the Queen singer Freddie Mercury. The princess was in disguise as a man. I've been speaking to Cleo Rokos, who was there on the night out in 1988. Cleo and Freddie were part of a starry circle of friends that included Kenny Everett, who presented a top TV show, which Cleo was on too. She couldn't believe she was entering the Royal Vauxhall Tavern with the most recognisable woman on the planet. And no one inside had any idea they were rubbing shoulders with royalty.
The bar was packed with men dressed as cowboys and, it was all in a fabulous atmosphere. So we walked in and we were sort of exhilarated and nervous, and we walked in like 4 school children all in a row together. Of course they recognised Freddie. Kenny's show at the time, we used to get sort of over 20 million viewers, so our show was really huge, so they'd recognise us, and they didn't even look at Diana. They thought that she was probably some beautiful young male model that had come out with Freddie.
That day, the fun started when Diana met up with them for a boozy lunch.
We were having lunch at the Bombay Brasserie, which is just off Gloucester Road, and we'd swap all the showbiz gossip for all the palace gossip and just have a bit of a glee and a shriek. Diana came in and she was just normally dressed, in her casual clothes, I think some jeans, and I remember her having a shirt with rolled up sleeves, but no security or no anyone, just her. She arrived and she suggested that we all have peach bellinis because she said they do fabulous peach bellinis here. She always wanted to know what was really going on behind the scenes, because at that time there weren't so many magazines and there weren't so many ways of knowing, the inside scoop, so to speak. So she'd want to know who was gay, who was having affairs, so all the jolly gossip.
After their meal, they didn't want the fun to end, so they headed to Kenny's penthouse for drinks and music. It didn't take long for the silliness to begin.
Kenny put the Gypsy Kings on. He had the album and it was very popular at the time. Every time you walked into a room with Diana, if it was somewhere that was private, the first thing she'd like to do was kick off her shoes. So I heard the music going on, and when I came out of the kitchen into the front room, there were Kenny and Diana dancing around with giant feather dusters, because Kenny had a collection of very exotic, long-handled feather dusters, which sort of looked like dehydrated Vegas dancers. And so they were dancing around, waving these feather dusters and just having just a lovely, fun moment.
Then, Freddie Mercury arrived. He had planned a night out at the Royal Vauxhall Tavern with Cleo and Kenny, but before that, they all sat down with a bottle of champagne to watch the telly. The US sitcom The Golden Girls was on.
So we all took a character and spoke the words with the voice down, so we sort of made our own storyline, and it was just very funny and very silly. And I remember Diana sitting with the cushion in front of her face laughing because some wild comments and wild lines were said, and it was just very, very funny.
Would Diana ever do any of those risque lines as well?
Oh, she was very funny, yeah. No, she absolutely, not to the extreme that Kenny and Freddie.
After that, they were ready to head out. Cleo assumed that Diana would be going home to Kensington Palace, but Diana wanted her night to carry on.
She said, well, I want to come with you. And we thought at first she was joking, and we laughed. And she said, no, I want to come with you. And Kenny said, but you can't come with us. We're going to a bar full of hairy gay men, and sometimes there are brawls, and I can just see tomorrow's headline, Future Queen of England dies in gay bar brawl, and it'll all be my fault. And so she was saying, oh no, but I want to come. And Freddie just said, oh, let the girl have some fun.
And so she did. But what was the world's most stylish icon going to wear to the club?
My brother, he was a war photographer in El Salvador, and he'd just returned and he had a camouflage jacket. He'd given this to me, and Kenny sort of fell in love with it and wanted to borrow it to go out that night. He bounded downstairs and showed Diana the jacket, and Diana tried it on. This jacket just looked sensational on her. The sleeves weren't too long or anything. And Kenny had on the landing also a big wooden chest in which he kept sort of leather caps and vests and sort of his going out outfits. So he pulled out one of the black leather caps with a peak and gave it to Diana to try, and we put all her hair up underneath the cap. And Freddie passed her his aviators he had, and she put the aviators on. Kenny and I were standing behind her as she looked in the mirror, and we were saying, wow, you just look so fabulous. You don't look at all like you.
All dressed up, ready to go. The four took a black cab to the Royal Vauxhall Tavern. And it wasn't long before they were rubbing shoulders with gay men who were hoping for a good night out.
People pushing past, trying to get to the bar. So it wasn't a rude atmosphere, but, a crowded bar where people are pushing one another. When talking about it, it brings back the smell of the place, a bit beery. A smell of happiness, really, a smell of an anticipation of a very happy evening ahead.
Was it sweaty?
A bit sweaty, but it was still early, so it hadn't quite reached that peak of smelling of poppers and urine yet. She ordered drinks with Freddie. Freddie had a beer, and we ordered some wine, and we'd already had a couple of drinks before we arrived, so we were already in an elated mood.
What did it feel like knowing that you knew who she was, but nobody else did?
We were all exhilarated. We were nudging each other like school children, and Diana loved it.
Did you think at any time her disguise would be revealed?
I don't think any of us actually thought that, because we saw how different she looked, but you never know. You just never knew. And we said, don't, whatever you do, take the glasses off. Then we must have been there in total probably about, 20, 25 minutes or something. And then we had to work our way out again. When we got out, we flagged down a cab. We took Diana back to Kensington Palace. We dropped her off, and then we left. And the next day she sent round all the outfit, all folded up, with the driver, delivered back to Kenny's house with a note saying what a fabulous time was, and we have to do it again.
When you saw the note, did it make you have that moment of being like, we got away with it?
Yes, absolutely.
But was Princess Diana really smuggled into a gay bar in disguise? It seems an unbelievable story, and over time it's gained mythical status. Cleo told the story in her book, The Power of Positive Drinking, but when it was published, some were sceptical.
Somebody in the press said, well, it's a great story, but everyone else in the story is dead, so how do we know if it's true or not? It hadn't even crossed my mind. People had gone to interview people at the Vauxhall Tavern and things like that, and one of the managers, he said that years ago, Diana had come to the Vauxhall Tavern raising money for some charity thing, and he said to her, oh, well, let me show you around. And she said to him, well, actually, I've already been here. And she told him that she'd been there and it had been on a night she'd escaped with us.
Cleo feels lucky to have known the Diana that existed in private, away from the media glare.
The wonderful thing about getting together with Diana as we used to is that it was just a license to glee. We had no ulterior motive, and my vivid memories and most profound memories of Diana are of her throwing her head back, roaring with laughter. She had the most beautiful smile, and when she laughed, it was just complete and utter joy for her.
Cleo Rockos was speaking to me, Alex Collins, for that edition of the Witness History podcast from the BBC World